and Hispanic Heritage Month?
I mean, I don't have a go-to right now, but as you can see, there's people coming in. So I hope you guys are letting people in. People are joining, and I just want to welcome folks who are joining us. Um, we're about to get started. I just want to make sure everyone could hear me. All right. I think we're just missing two folks who are supposed to be joining us. Just gotta make sure that they're coming. I said that I was gonna close my phone off, and of course I didn't. And everybody wants to call when you're gonna do a webinar. Good afternoon and happy first day of National Expungement Week, guys. Glad to see everyone here. Thanks for everyone who have registered to be a part of this event. Forgive me as I look down. Um, you know, it's really important, as we know, to have this information. Without knowing our rights, we really can't really fight for the things that we know that we should have. And so again, my name is Pilar de Jesus. I am the New York City coordinator for National Expungement Week here in New York City. And I just again want to give thanks for all the folks that are here. And before we kick off our amazing first webinar of the first day of Expungement Week, um, you know, as we know, 2020 has been what some people call like a game of Jumanji. And so we've had a lot of unfortunate deaths. We've There's been a lot of uprisings. There've been a lot of things that especially as a person of color, that could really trigger a lot of our mental health. And a lot of our families have lost loved ones due to either a police killing, or COVID related, or just maybe natural related death, or maybe just something. And so I just wanted to take some time to give a moment of silence, especially because yesterday, as we know, we lost Supreme Court Judge Ginsburg. And so want to give a moment of silence for all the folks that are we have lost before we go down to what's going to happen today. We want to let folks know that this is interpreted in Spanish. Forgive me. And the interpreter will come on and just share with you, how that will go if you need that. But yeah, let's just take a few seconds to give a moment of silence for the folks who we've lost this year. All right. Thank you. And again, we want to send lots of positive vibes for people out there, especially during this webinar, because we will be talking. There's going to be some stories on here that are going to be pretty intense, and just sending a lot of positive vibes through this webinar. And so before we go into that, I know people are like, well, what is National Expansion Week? I have gotten that question a lot in the last few months. And so what National Expungement Week is really is it's a project of a group of organizers across different states. So we here in New York are not the only group of people who are currently organizing events to educate people and help people when it comes to either helping them with their criminal record, because having a criminal record creates barriers. And so what National Expungement Week focuses on, specifically in the last week of September, this being the third year, focuses on having these webinars or events. Last year or prior to this year, most of the events were in person. People can go in, and some people are still having in-person events in other states, but you would go in and get some sort of relief around your record, your criminal record, whether it was, again, depending what state, because in every state the laws are different. And you'll learn a lot more about expungement on Wednesday the 23rd. But what this week really is to do is to really go out into the communities that are the most affected when it comes to being criminalized for being black or brown, and going into these communities and helping people be educated and understand what is the process in their state, and then also helping them repair from that harm, and healing from that harm, helping them connect with free public defending attorneys that could maybe walk them through that process. Here in New York, and you'll learn a little bit maybe today, but a lot more on the 23rd, you'll hear from the attorneys who know about expungement and record sealing, and they could tell you it just really is almost non-existent here in New York State. And so for New York, this is why what we can do is just really have this information for you guys. So this is the last week of September, and so we're hosting these number of webinars so that folks are, aware of their rights, and then trying to connect them and repairing the harm that this has caused. Because again, there's 48,000 barriers for a person who has a criminal record, and that's like including housing, employment, being ownership, and so. Yeah, but not to go on and on. So before we go into these amazing panelists, just want to let you guys know how the run of show will go. Once the panelists are going, I'm not going to introduce them right now. I will introduce them as they are going to come up, and I will read a little bit about them. We will have a little bit of time for questions and answers at the end. So if you have any questions, please put them in the Q&A section down below. We also want to just put out a full disclaimer out there to folks that if we so happen to get Zoom bombed, we will more than likely end up just like immediately cutting the webinar off, because I don't know if you've been Zoom bombed before, but sometimes it can be really bad. We are also want to let folks know that this is being recorded. So if you're like, damn, I couldn't make it, or I wanted to show someone this, we are recording it, and we are going to figure out a way to share it with everyone, especially everyone who signed up and registered for this event. We will have, as I mentioned, a Spanish translator, and I'm going to ask one of the translator right in a few minutes to just give us, again, some guidelines for the panelists, for others who may be joining, who may need some translation services. But for the most part, guys, whoever is here watching, this is more for you to hear the stories from folks who have been affected by the system in one way or another. I myself have a story to share with you. I'm not only your moderator, but I'm also a client, I guess. But so it's just going to be a very conversation. You'll get to hear from folks, hear their story, hear from a great attorney, Michelle Fields, who's going to talk about her experiences, and we're going to save for Michelle for last. So please just make sure you stay on as long as for the whole thing. And then we just want to remind folks, and we'll remind folks at the end as well, we do have a webinar that will have a lot more information on what is expungement, what is sealing, what is clean slate, what is automatic expungement with marijuana charges, what does reentry look like. But today we just mostly want to just have a conversation. And so therefore, without me having to go on, before we kick off our panelists, we're going to have Chocolate Brown kick us off with some great vibes, and maybe Chocolate Brown, before you go into your craft, if you could just share who you are, let people know how they can get in touch with you, or save it at the end. But I pass it to you now.
I just want to know how many people laughed when they heard my name was Chocolate Brown. Okay, I just want to see those. All right. Can you guys hear me all right? Everything cool? As Pilar said, my name is Chocolate Brown. I am a singer, songwriter. these songs that I'm going to be sharing with you now are songs that I wrote over COVID. So during COVID, I was stuck in this 3-bedroom apartment by myself and had nothing but this keyboard to save me. So like, you guys are going to hear that. This first song is called Starboy. Can you guys hear the piano all right? Good? Cool. All right. So good. It's alright. We should all just fall in love and listen till the days go. Really say it's all good. And they say it's alright. We should all just fall in love. And listen till the days go. But I feel like just a lonely boy, just a lonely boy in space. I just a lonely boy, just a lonely boy in space. No, I ain't got no legs in this spaceship. I can't feel my face in this spaceship. I can't feel my heart in this spaceship. I'ma be the best me in this spaceship. Just a lonely boy, just a lover boy in space. I'm just a lover boy, just a lonely boy in space. Said I'm in another nebula, even all my homies are a parsec away, a parsec away. Even all my homies are blowing on that purple stuff a parsec away. And they scream, it's so good. Baby girl, it's alright. So we should all just fall in love and listen till today's gone. So what do I feel like? Just a lonely boy, just a lover boy in space. Whoa, just a lover boy, just a lonely boy in space. It's all good. It's alright. And we should all just fall in love and listen till the days go. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you so
It
much.
feels
Thank you
weird
so
not
much.
hearing people, but that song is called Starboy. Um, you can follow me on Instagram if you'd like. All my music is on there. I have all my music on sound on all streaming networks. Chocolate Brown original song. Definitely see it here. You're welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. That was awesome. I really appreciate you. Um, and as I mentioned, we have five panelists, and so just because it's, each panelist will have about 20 minutes, and I just remembered that I did not let the translator give just a quick message to folks. And so before we get started, I'm going to invite one of the translators to just share some tips, and then again, if there's folks who are needing translation, please let us know.
Hola, los organizadores del evento de hoy tienen la firme determinación de crear un espacio multilingüe y con esa finalidad contamos con interpretación disponible al español. El evento se realizará en inglés. Les pedimos a todos los participantes que hablen despacio y en voz alta y clara en sus micrófonos para facilitar la interpretación. La interpretación está activada para este evento y si usted está usando la aplicación Zoom, podrá ver el icono de un mundo en la parte de abajo de su pantalla. Haga un clic en el mundo para escuchar la interpretación y seleccione español. Si tiene algún problema al respecto, por favor, escriba un comentario en el chat. Hi, the organizers of today's event have made a commitment to creating a multilingual space. To that end, we have interpretation available into Spanish or English. The event will be held in English, and we ask all participants to speak slowly, loud, and clear into the microphone to make the interpretation easier. So the interpretation is activated, and you will see at the bottom of your screen a globe icon. To listen to interpretation, click on the globe and select English. If you have any problems doing this, please comment in the chat box. Thank you. Have a great event.
Thank you. All right, guys. Well, again, welcome for being here. And again, the reason we're doing this is because, as we know, especially in this country, being a Black and brown person is not easy, and many of us here, including myself, have been targeted in many, many, many ways. And so that is really what this space is going to be, for. And I just also want to say this is a no judgment space. People are sharing their personal stories, things that they've been impacted by and experienced. And so I just want to make sure that folks who are here watching, listening, that you come with that open heart and mind. And so before I pass it to some of my people, I just want to say a little bit about myself and why I'm here. I'm Pilar de Jesus. I'm the New York City coordinator for National Expungement Week, but I do wear many hats. I'm an advocate, activist, fighter here in my community. They call me Pilar la Problema, because if it ain't right, I'm going to fight against it. And if my people are being harmed, I'm going to fight and try to protect my people and protect my community and protect myself because, again, as I've mentioned, I myself have been targeted. But I'm a born and raised Mexicana, Puerto Rican, born in East Harlem all my life. Right here in the same apartment where I'm right now. I've been here for 39 years. It's been in my family for 60 years. I have some family that were part of the Young Lords. So clearly I have some fighter in me from before I was born. I am a fire sign, so there you go. Even more fire. But I'm just basically a very passionate individual that, I've been impacted by different systems, not only the police, but the housing courts, the, employment, employers. And so different areas I have spent time in Rikers Island. My home was raided last year. I was involved in a raid that just changed my life in so many ways. You know, of course, there were some harms that came from it, but honestly, you know, I'm here right now. You know, I'm here leading this conversation. I'm here organizing with other people around these issues. I've gotten to meet so much amazing, great people who some of them are on this panel because of the experience that I went through that ended up leading me down this path that I am now. I've always wanted to be funny since as a child, a criminal defense attorney. I don't know why, but I don't want to be a lawyer now, but I still enjoy fighting. You know, I leave it to the lawyers. I don't want to be a lawyer, love them all, but no. But it's a passion of mine to fight for what's right. You know, I'm not very big on, have many opinions around our government. And so I've also ran for office twice. Um, you know, like I mentioned, I've worn many hats. I'm a big marijuana activist, not only consumer, but activist, trying to get marijuana legalized here in New York State. Um, I'm an aunt, and most of the reasons that I fight so hard is because it's for them. You know, when we think about, you know, all the things that are going on in the world, and then kids are keep being born. You know, for me personally, I don't want my children or my nephews and nieces to continue to be raised in such oppression and to be continually to be targeted, to continue to have to struggle to not have generational wealth, to not heal from the generational trauma that a lot of us come with. Like I had to learn that. I learned that last year during my healing process, and I'm still healing during my healing process from the raid. But all the trauma that we carry in our genes, we don't talk about, or families don't want to talk about. And so that's mostly why I'm here. You know, like I said, I've been arrested. I spent some time in Rikers last year, but I've also been to central booking a few times. You know, and there I got to witness where, you know, women, you know, the system sucks regardless, but for women especially too, like women, it's even worse. You know, there were women there before I got there waiting for 12 hours one time. 12 hours before they were getting called for arraignment. There were only like 6 of them. And, you know, I was asking, like, why aren't the women being called? And, you know, depending on what CEO, what guard you got, you get the right answer, or you get the really stupid answer. And it was like, oh, no, it's at the discretion of the judge. One other, because I've been to central booking a few times. Another one told me it was because it's easier to process the men first because a lot of them are repeat offenders and so many of these women are first timers, so they don't like prioritize them. And I was just so pissed off about that. I mean, I'm pissed off about it all, but especially because these are mothers. These are mothers. Majority of women holding down the households are the women, right? And if that mother is in prison, then how does that how does that happen? And so it was just really sad to hear the stories. There was a pregnant woman, and so really got to see too how women, you know, although the system is just terrible in itself, but just how women are treated in there. And it just pisses me off more. And, you know, I've been working for 20 years, so that's a lot of taxes that I've paid for 20 years. And to continue to see that I still have to be still fighting just for my basic rights. I have to fight for housing because I'm a housing advocate too. Like I have to fight. We have to fight for housing. We have to fight to have a job. We have to fight to get have a business. We have to fight to walk down the street without being harassed. And so that's mostly why I'm here, and excited to be here with all these other folks here because, guys, hold on to your seats because there's going to be some great people you're going to get to meet here. They're all from different areas. We even have someone who's not from New York State, but she's an amazing human that I got to meet last year. You know, again, some good people on here. Unfortunately, some of their stories are, you know, really not uncommon. And so for that, I'm going to start us off with our first panelist, and excuse me as I read a little bit, but her name, she's one of our youngest panelists here. And her name is Nina Franklin. And Miss Nina Franklin is a high school senior at, and forgive me if I don't know the acronym to your school, but you could share this when you tell us about yourself. But I have HSES. And she is one of the youth activists that is part of One Freedom, and lives in Frederick Douglass houses. So if you folks don't know, and we're going to have the folks at the end to introduce themselves, but One Freedom is a nonprofit that works with high school students, and I will let Nina talk a little bit more about what they do. But Nina, I'm going to pass it to you, and just so you know, you have 20 minutes, just go.
Hi everybody.
Hola a todos.
My name's Nia. Um, as was stated, I'm 17 years old. Just to give a little background, I go to high school for environmental studies, which is in Hell's Kitchen. So yeah, I'm gonna talk a little bit about some of my experience with the police that live that I live right by a police precinct. So I have a lot of interactions, a lot more interactions with the police than I would like to admit. Um, so I like to hang out with my friends a lot. A lot of my friends, we all live in the same neighborhood, so we all tend to hang out around where we live. And I remember having walked one day, and we're all teenagers, I mainly hang out with a lot of kids that are not very much older than me, but around my age. So one of at least two of my friends had got into a disagreement, and it escalated, of course, to fighting, because that's unfortunately what happens sometimes. And we wanted it to be, we didn't want to interject because it was something that was building up to it. But um, unfortunately, I guess the fight took a dark turn, and the cops had pulled up in an undercover car and jumped out of the car and told us to put our hands up. And I remember like thinking and sitting there thinking, oh my God, please don't pull out your gun. I don't want to get in trouble. I just want to be able to go home, because it was like down the block from my house. And I was hanging out with a lot of guys. So my main concern was that like all of my friends would be able to be safe. And it was a really traumatic experience now that I think, looking back on it, because I was like 13 or something like that. Like I was pretty young, and it was the first interaction where the cops, it was directed towards me. And I don't know, it took me a while to like actually talk about it, because just thinking about it, it could have gone wrong so many different ways. And I didn't expect it to be as profound as it is. So because of that experience, as well as an experience I had during COVID, during the quarantine, where I had met with members of my community just to have a socially distant gathering and see each other, because we hadn't been able to see each other in a very long time, and I missed interacting with these people. So we sat outside just in front of our building, and a cop car rolled up on us and had decided to try to search somebody's bag for no reason at all. And because of that, we all were exercising our right to refuse the search. And the cop actually called somebody stupid because of that. And it was interesting because it really I really saw like the dynamic between police and Black and brown communities in general. And I thought it was really sad because the cop was Hispanic, and I was like, come on, man, like this is like how you grew up and you're saying stuff like that. And the other cops that he was with, none of them did anything, and it was mind-boggling to me, and it bugged me to my core because like I couldn't, it made no sense why the cop being able to say that was, and the cop being able to say that was something that was okay. And then because we were a bag search, they end up calling for backup, and like a good like 5 to 10 cop cars pulled up, and they're like telling everybody to go home. They threw a drink at like the wall or something like that. So yeah, those are at least some of my experiences I've had with the cops now that I'm older and understand the dynamic between the two. And a lot of it shaped a lot of what I'm interested, a lot of what I do. I've mainly grown up, although I don't live in Harlem anymore. I've been back and forth in Harlem pretty much all my life. So it's something that wasn't new to me, but it was something that for the first time I really understood how bad it could go. And I think just because of the fact that I had been seeing so much police brutality being recorded, and the fact that I know the difference about like how housing tends to treat Black and brown communities terrible, and going through all of that, I think being able to understand that now that I'm a high schooler, I think it was just something that really resonated with me to the point where I'm like, I don't really want to have to try to explain this to my future kids or anybody for in general. I have 2 younger sisters, and I don't want to explain to them why me like about situations and how they should handle themselves, because I mean it's 2020, we should be doing better by now. So in terms of that, it prompted a lot of what I do in school. Actually, I had wrote my junior thesis on police brutality in America, and I had talked about different solutions that had occurred over time as a way to try and help, I guess you could say, ease police brutality and tensions between police and Black and brown communities in particular. And I saw that a lot of it left everything up to perspective, which I think is quite sad actually, because why is it that 2 people can have 2 different opinions about something that is clearly wrong? And when the quarantine started, it was just after I finished and gave my thesis to my English teacher. And then the George Floyd murder happened, and I don't want to say his name wrong, but the boy who was jogging and had got killed, and then Breonna Taylor, and then all these others' deaths. Then I'm like, you know what? I'm tired of people not talking about this. So I started posting all of these articles on my Instagram, and I started to talk more about why this is not okay, and that people should be aware that there was a hanging of a pregnant woman like in one of the southern states, and that she was stabbed. People should be aware that there have been actual lynchings occurring under the Trump presidency. I think that this is something that should be talked about way more, and I think that we should talk about that the actual looters in the Black Lives Matter protests are white supremacists trying to take away from what they're actually trying to do. I think that we should talk about the strength of Trayvon Martin's mother, who's actually trying to run for Congress, if I'm not mistaken, in Florida. And we should talk about the strength of another mother who just lost her son, from what I saw on the news, about how she started a program to help these young Black boys to keep them off the streets. So in terms of that, that's what prompted me to join One Freedom, because I wanted to know how I could actually help within my community instead of just sitting on the sidelines and pinpointing all of the problems that were in it. I wanted to actually do something about it. And my friend is actually Freedom's nephew. So he told me about the program at HSCS, and that prompted me to join it, where we learned about activism and food deserts and the importance of healthy and fresh food, and where we try to implement good eating habits in public schools that particularly have a lot of Black and brown students. And then we implemented a program actually the summer that just passed, for where we trained I want to say three to four kids, just about activism and everything that we had learned already in the program for the past 2 years that I have actually been in it. And it was interesting. I formed a lot of new friends. I learned a lot. I didn't actually know a lot about the Young Lords, unfortunately, before I had been in the program. So learning about them and everything that they did was really important to me and resonated with me. And I was glad that I actually knew, because it helped paint a picture of that a lot of movements have been started by youth. So it gave me hope for the future. And that's basically all I have to say.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. And, we definitely need more youth to be getting involved. And I'm really happy to hear that, you're doing that, and, you're doing that with the help of One Freedom, and you've learned some things through that. And again, like I definitely resonate with a lot of things that you shared. Especially dealing, I live in East Harlem, so we have a very high population of NYC public housing, and so there's always the public, the PSAs around, and then it's the precincts too. So like I have the 23rd, the 25th, and then PSA 5, and it's just a whole bunch of police everywhere, a lot of the lights, and a lot of harassment, and definitely since COVID. There has been a lot more, at least in this community, an increase where police are harassing folks and, who are just hanging out. And it sounds like that's what happened in your situation. People just having a little gathering, being respectful, and then, of course, the police are like not okay with that. And I, too, when you talked about the Latino the Latino officer. One time, I was walking across the street with a cup, foam white cups, and I only had juice in it. But in our communities, some folks put juice and put some other stuff in. So what? But police use that as a tool too to harass and pull people over and try to search them. And this officer did that. He pushed me. He didn't even like, hey, stop me. He pushed me, and he said he pushed me because he said he was calling me and I didn't answer. And these are just one. It was Officer Garcia. I asked for his badge, and this is before Know Your Rights was passed. And so he fought to give me his badge and ended up giving me the badge information of one of his other partners who wrote the ticket. But I appreciate you so much for sharing. I guess, would you say that, I know you had that incident, but have many of your friends, especially since COVID, like, has there been an increase in harassment, like them being harassed by NYPD? Because, like now they're saying that if you don't have a mask, they were stopping people for not having masks at one point, or just stopping people. Would you say that now is like increased a lot more since COVID?
Yeah, definitely. It's overwhelmingly increased because due to COVID. I think just for the simple factor of like the fact that people are now going outside, like the weather got good and people were outside, or people just sitting outside just to get fresh air because you're tired of being cooped up in the house. And the cops would just like, there are cops sitting literally, they would come off the street and up onto the sidewalk, just sit there just waiting for something that they could do just to mess with people. And it's really sad to see because they try so hard to make themselves seem like they're your friends and they're there to help you, when in actuality you're not even giving me the basic human decency to treat me like I'm a person, and instead you're treating me automatically as a criminal and you don't even know what I do. Like, and it's sad to see, and it's unfortunate because I have many friends who have actually been arrested and thrown up against cop cars, or like thrown in the back of a cop car for no apparent reason other than the fact that the cops just wanted to mess with them. And like, it's even happened to members of my own family, and it's mind-boggling to think about, because the fact that when you put on your uniform, you suddenly forget that you're a person of color is beyond me, because if you take it off, you're going to be treated the exact same way I am. It doesn't matter if you end up pulling out your badge. They don't care. They shoot first and ask questions later. So the fact that you're still doing this, even though you look exactly like me or pretty much any person on this panel, it's sad to think about that you don't remember that the trauma that it could bring dealing with that. So, but yeah, for sure, it's sad to see, but it has overwhelmingly increased.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, and I agree with all those things, especially like these officers that just do whatever they want. And, when you said that, the part about how you don't know what trauma you bring me, I have friends that have families that are cops, and I follow them on social media, and one of them, he's definitely like, not all cops are bad, and his we debate a lot about this, and he posted a video because it looks like one of the other family members is decided to become a cop and graduated from cop school or whatever. So he got some of his other cop friends in paddy wagons to come, like, use the sirens and like with using the microphone to say congratulations. But it was three paddy wagons. The sirens were going off. They were also facing the wrong direction of traffic. And it's like, one, you're violating the traffic rules. Because if it was me or you who wanted to go tell our cousin congratulations and park that way, she would be messed with, right? But then it was like, do you realize what trauma you bring, what your car, what you represent in our communities? You may think that you're doing, this is a beautiful thing. You want to congratulate your family member into, joining this oppressive job, but you're not thinking about the other community members. And that's what I've noticed too with a lot of our cops, whether, they just, that's probably why they come with cops, because they only think of themselves. But they're not thinking of others. They don't look at it as a bad thing, again, because they look at themselves as heroes. So I definitely agree with that. And I just, again, want to say you are an amazing young lady. I would definitely encourage, I I don't believe in these systems, and so I really believe that we should be thinking of ways to think outside of the system. So how do we stop calling police? Because so many of our people are like, I'm calling the police on you, I'm calling the police on you. I do tenant work, so a lot of my tenants will tell me, "Oh, I wanted to call the police on that person because they were smoking weed," and it's like, whoa, whoa, whoa. Can we like get out of this mind frame of always wanting to go to the police and look at the police as putting someone in jail as a place of helping someone when it really it going to jail is not a way to help someone heal. It's not going to help someone be better. And, we have to also get out of that mindset. And it's going to take a lot of work. It's going to take a lot of the young people, especially because, again, if you start young, you guys are more savvy too now with technology. You guys can get 1,000 people in the room in a second with technology. And so I do see one of our panelists has a question for Nina, I assume. And since we have like 2 minutes, Michelle, do you want to go ahead and ask her the question?
It's not a question, it's just a statement. I would really encourage Nia. I'm just inspired by your story. I would encourage you to use that thesis for your college application. I continue your youth activism, continue to mobilize, because every movement has started with students and youth. So I just wanted to, say that to you, and stay encouraged. Don't be defeated, and never become classically conditioned to police brutality and, the over-policing in our communities. And I think a lot of young people, they have normalized, that trauma. So I just wanted to really, say thank you very much. And I'm inspired by your story.
Yes, thank you. And I'm sorry, I think I said Nina is Nia. Sorry. My apologies. And so, since we're talking about police brutality, and we're talking about, these things, our next guest, who some may know, some may not know, we have Victoria Davis. Victoria Davis, let me just make sure she's still here because I know she said she had a little quick issue. But yeah, Victoria Davis is here with us today. And if folks don't know who Victoria Davis is, she is the founder of Sisters of Justice Incorporated. Her organization and activism was birthed out of grieving for her brother Delron Small, who was killed by NYPD officers. Victoria has continued since the death of her brother to demand and fight for accountability for her brother and other victims of various forms of state violence. I got to meet Victoria one day. I was protesting outside of Governor Cuomo's office for marijuana legalization, and she came with little baby Justice. And baby Justice is this cute little baby. He's a little handsome, and maybe we'll share a picture at the end. But she stopped by because she was in the area, and Cassandra Fredrickson from Drug Policy Alliance had introduced us. So I got to meet her really quickly there. We've been in the same space with Communities Unite for Police Reform because, again, fighting against the abusive police here in New York City. So yeah, I'm gonna pass it to Victoria so she can share her story, share the story about her brother if you do not know. But I'm going to pass the mic on, and Victoria, you are good to go.
Hi, guys. Thanks for having me today. Thank you so much, Nia, for your powerful words and everything that you said. I think that's so great that you're starting at a young age, and just at an age where it's ideal to just move forward and just start a movement that's going to build community. So thank you so much for that. And so I'll just give a quick introduction. So I'm the founder of Sisters of Justice, Inc. And all of the work that I do, besides my place of employment, is birthed out of the fact that my brother was killed on July 4th in 2016 by NYPD officer Wayne Isaacs while my brother was going to an event, my cousin's event on the 4th of July. Officer Wayne Isaacs followed him down the block while he was in a car with his 4-month-old son, 14-year-old stepdaughter, and his partner at the time. And so the officer followed him down the block. I guess there was like some sort of exchange before then. Like, I know that the news had reported it as the road rage cop incident, right? And so the officer followed him. The officer didn't belong where my brother was in front of the barbershop, but he ultimately killed my brother. My brother stepped out of the vehicle. So I've been, I have for the last 4 years spoken to people about the case because for a few reasons, it's very confusing to people. I've heard things like he shouldn't have exited the vehicle. But then I remind people he was going to an event on the 4th of July. He was killed in front of my cousin's barbershop. The officer shouldn't have followed him. Either way, he shouldn't have, been killed. And the officer should have driven off. The officer should not have rolled down his window. The officer just shouldn't have done all of the things that he did. And also the officer was also off duty, which we know he wasn't really off duty, but he was in his personal vehicle, in his plain clothes, and he escalated a driving situation that ended with my brother's death. And so since then, I've continued the work. My work is focused more on building community. I think that to Pilar's point, when people call the police on people, it's really a form of violence. It's a very violent statement. Even if someone says, I'm going to call the police on you, it's almost as if, especially, I believe it's always been, but I believe especially in this day and time, when someone is saying that they're going to call the police on someone, they're almost asking for their death. They're asking for them to lose their housing. They're asking for them to possibly lose their children. And I wanted to speak about the fact that any interaction with the police, can end in someone's death. It also can result in someone losing their housing. That is a result of state violence. Someone can lose their children, which we understand that the initial interaction with the police, right, kind of feeds other systems. And so we have the foster care system, and a lot of children in foster care. I myself was in foster care. My brother was in foster care. We are former foster youth, right? And so that is a form of state violence, removing children from homes and having strangers raise them, and then paying these strangers to raise them. And when they turn 21, we're like, oh, okay, bye, just make the best of it. And so a lot of things are, a lot of us, I guess, can attest to the fact that we've all experienced state violence in some way, shape, or form. So I don't particularly focus on police accountability because I've done police accountability because of my brother, but I also stand with other victims' families, and we've become family. However, there's like a whole lot of work to do. There's like more work to be done. Building communities is always at the top of my list. And I'm thankful that I'm able to be here for National Expungement Week. I was thinking about it earlier, and to that I wanted to say, when a person is not allowed to re-enter into society in a way where they're not stigmatized, dehumanized, and able to create a quality of life for themselves that they see ideal based on legal and societal standards and of what humans are. We're essentially dehumanizing people, or we're putting people on probation and waiting for them to slip up, We are dehumanizing people, and we're again, asking for a person's death, and not just their physical death, right? Like the death of their soul, the death of their person. We know that in our communities, lots of times people suffer from depression. They're suffering from depression a lot of times because they're not able to live a quality of life. And people want to survive, people want to live. And the question that I wrestle with is, how do we live? How do we survive when we have all of these systems in place? The systems are in place, they're there. And so I've come up with a building communities. And it starts with each of us. We all have a strength. Whatever that strength is, do it. The past 4 years, I rallied, I protested, I've expended a whole lot of energy. I mean, I rallied one time like almost 20 miles, marched almost 20 miles while 8 months pregnant. So I had a baby almost a year after my brother's trial, where the officer was unjustly allowed to let go back to work, and it was a not guilty verdict. It was an unjust not guilty verdict. And so a year later, I gave birth to my son, and I named him Justice. I didn't realize until about a few months ago, all of that violence was the reason that I gave birth to Justice 3 weeks early in an emergency C-section because I had preeclampsia. I almost died giving birth to Justice. My heart stopped. I had to be resuscitated once. My heart stopped quite a few times. I didn't realize that it was from all of this fighting for justice. And one day I said to myself, I'm not fighting for justice anymore. I am going to demand accountability in different areas, but I have justice. I mean, literally have justice. And he'll be 2 next month, but that's what helps me. I also have a 9-year-old, but I have justice now, right? And so I had to rethink what justice looks like, rethink what accountability looks like, just for my own mental health, just for my own physical and spiritual health. And so that's how I continue to do the work, because I'm not okay with just a seat at the table, entering a room. If it's Thanksgiving, I want to cut the turkey. I want to know what seasonings are in there. And I think that as a community, we cannot continue to delegate tasks to people. Who's going to save us? We're going to save us. Be the change that you want to see. If you have an idea and you think that that's the best way to go, you do it. Don't delegate it to other people. I've had people and organizations delegate so many tasks to me. Victoria will say it. Victoria will do it. And I did, because I thought it was for the greater good of humanity. I thought that that's what my brother would have wanted me to do. And as I start to rethink what accountability looks like and what Blackness even looks like, it looks like living. It looks like life. Like it feels like, and it looks like living. I think that Black and Brown Native people, we're just not allowed to live because of the systemic racism, and we're just not allowed to live. We're always just trying to survive while we're breathing. We're just not living. And so I've committed this year, during the pandemic, I decided that I'm going to live, and I'm just going to tell people, let's live. Let's build community. Like, let's do it. Let's not delegate this task to anyone else. Let's not look for a savior. Let's not even look for people in our community to weigh all of this stuff on their shoulders. And let's stop standing on the shoulders of people who have decided to dedicate their life to selflessness and activism, organizing, advocacy. Let's not stand on their backs. Let's try to figure out how we're going to help them. A lot of times people will tell me, oh, Victoria, I see you. I see you. And I'm like, what do you see me doing? Because I didn't see you. So if I don't see you, then that means that you're not doing the work. And that means that you're also adding to state violence, right? And so when I was on that table giving birth to my son in emergency C-section where I almost died, it's because a lot of people were seeing me. No. Let's join together and don't just see me. How are you supporting me? How am I supporting you? How are we supporting our community? Let's not think of things as just on an individualistic level. A lot of times people think that's creepy and it's weird and it's idealist and it's hippie. Like, no, it's living. It's living. I mean, we're going to continue to survive for capitalism for how long? People are getting killed left and right. I mean, George Floyd had these people kneel on his neck. When I think about the insanity attached to that, the violence that it would take to choke the life out of someone and watch the life just leave them. I think about my brother, the way that Officer Wayne Isaac shot him 3 times, and watch the life on a video. You can just see like how he just stood there, just callous and cold, and just watched the life leave his body. You have to be a sick individual. And so he also never provided any first aid. He did nothing to save his life. And so oftentimes when people are taking these jobs for their own self-serving reasons, right? I mean, protecting and serving who and what? If you would watch someone bleed out and die in the street and then lie about fake injuries, it just doesn't make any sense. And so we're seeing that over and over again. We're seeing that in Rochester. We're seeing it in Minnesota. We're seeing it, but we're also seeing it in other areas. We're seeing it at the doctor's office. We're seeing it with all these people doing these weird Karen videos. We're seeing violence and white supremacy show up in areas that we didn't see before. And so we kind of have to rethink what that looks like and how we're going to move forward. We have to be on code, right? We have to be humans. We have to allow other people to be humans, but we have to be. And so that's, that's all I guess I have to say for now. But thank you guys for having me here. I'm here. Don't feel bad to reach out.
I really, 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 really appreciate you for being here, Victoria. I'm so glad. Like, you guys don't know, I've been sending Victoria emails to be part of National Exposure Week for all these months, and it's just been, I put the wrong email. Fun fact about me, I'm dyslexic, so I put like one letter before another letter, so her emails have been kicking back. But I've been like, I'm going to talk to her, and, we finally got to connect. And I'm so glad the way the universe brought you here to share this story, especially for folks who have not heard it before, and just to hear from you. And you're right, it's like calling the police is a form of violence. And, I've had to tell my mom that. And it's a challenge to have that conversation with her because she doesn't understand it. Because like others, she thinks police are a savior. They're going to help. And it's like, and then she's talking about calling the police on my sister who's already going through things, right? So I'm like, do you realize that this is not going to help? And so it's a challenge, especially in my household, to even just have that discussion about why we shouldn't be doing that. And so thank you for that. And then also, that whole comment about if I didn't see you there, you ain't doing the work. I be saying the same thing. People always want to be taking credit for doing the I don't know what. And I'm like, nah, I know who's on the front lines. Like, I see them all the time. I know, I may, I'm bad with names, but I see them. So that's why when people be like, oh, I do this, I'd be like, And, we need more help because, again, all we've been doing is surviving. All I've been doing is surviving. And, just recently I had to get checked on that. Like, my boss was like, Pilar, you're my supervisor. I don't like to call her boss because she's a great leader. She was like, Pilar, our lives is to survive, and you've literally just been nonstop. And so, I want to encourage other folks to please, you know, we're not going to fix this problem unless we work together. And, you know, a lot of us too have a problem with that. Even, you know, it's because we've been oppressed and lived under this capitalistic world for so long. It's like, I got to get ahead first. I got to go first. I got to get first instead of us working together, right? And then it becomes, I got to get ahead, and then I got to call the cops on you because you're getting ahead too fast or whatever, you know. But yeah. But do other panelists have anything they want to like talk to Victoria about, or ask a question, or make a comment, or anyone on the new team?
There's a question from the audience. Question is, Victoria, can you tell us about your foundation?
Yes, and so it's like very new. I like just got a logo. This is like a whole new life for me, so please bear with me. But I am building Sisters of Justice with collective liberation in mind. I am a victim's sister, and so then I know often we see the victims' moms, and we're all family, we're all together. But I'm a sister, which is a very strange space for people sometimes. They're like, a sister, like, why are you here? And so my mom died when I was 9, Dalram was 12, my other brother was 6. And so there is no mom to represent him. It's me. And so I realized that on this journey, it is a little odd sometimes to see sisters there, but I feel like Dalron deserves accountability. He deserves representation, despite the fact that our mom died. And so with that in mind, building this organization means building community. And for not just police killing victim sisters, like just women and sisters and empowerment. I have 2 girls that are also partnering with me, and one is doing work around sex trafficking, and the other one is doing work regarding mother-daughter relationships. And so building relationships as it pertains to women is something that I'm doing. And so I'm partnering with different organizations, and just to allow space for collective liberation. Like, I want people to be able to build their stuff. I built my stuff, and we come together so that there's no weird hierarchy, there's no egotistical organizations, there's no, and to be clear, like, I think that oftentimes when people do build organizations and companies, a lot of times, you know, it is built out of grieving and hurt, right? But we have to make sure that when we are building with the intention to heal, we're not harming by a mistake. And so I want to be held accountable. That's why I continue to show up in spaces, because my intention is not to harm. And I don't think many people's intentions are to harm, but I do think that it can happen inadvertently if there's no checks and balances. And so this organization, I'm always looking for partnerships. I'm always looking for just people who want to do the work. People, I mean, I don't expect people to march 20 miles or pregnant. Like, I think, I don't know why I did it, but I do expect people to just do the work, any and all tactics, whatever it is that people bring to the table. I'm just here for it. Okay, yeah. Is it your mute?
Sorry, yes, thank you. I thought I muted myself. I was just saying thank you so much. I appreciate you very much, and I definitely agree with everything you said. And so there's not much I can add to that. Especially, well, I guess with the part with the women, yeah, especially with women, like I mentioned, you know, again, all the systems are really screwed up. But, you know, the process, especially in the criminal justice system, it's even worse for women, and most of the women that are there for nonviolent crimes. they might lose their custody of their children, so it's putting their children through harm. I met a lot of women when I went there that all of them were there for nothing violent. One was stealing from Macy's, and she told me the reason she steals, is because she lost her job, and then her losing her job caused her to become homeless. So therefore, she started doing drugs and then began stealing so she could try to find housing and find a job. But she was like very clear that she didn't steal from human beings, is that she was stolen from these corporations. And I was like, yeah. But she definitely made a comment about, and it made me really sad. That she preferred to be in prison than being out here in this world, because not finding housing was a problem, finding a job, and it was almost like she couldn't get her life back together. And again, that's part of the reason why we're having this webinar and why National Expungement exists, is because we recognize, outside of all, it's crazy, right? Here, these police officers are getting away with murdering people, harassing people, just doing whatever the hell they want. And yet, people who are out here trying to survive due to these systems are the ones that continue to be more harmed and then looked at as we're the animals and the problem. And, that's part of the reason, too, why this webinar was called The War on Black and Brown Humans, because I don't know how anybody doesn't see it's just that's all it's been forever. And you had talked about it, like even now more so, all these Karens that are coming up. I had an experience 2 weeks ago waiting online to get into IKEA, and this man was threatening to call the police on me because I did refuse to wear my mask. I was outside and practicing social distancing, and here he was, this white older man, looking for security. I'm going to get you thrown out, telling me he's going to get me thrown out. And so yeah, it's a problem, but we have to work together, like you said, in this hierarchy, and not harm each other too in that process, because I have also I've experienced that, and I'm sure a lot of us here, all the panelists here and people watching, have also experienced that. And that comes from because of the trauma we haven't healed from. So now we've brought it into this space, and then it's not really healing. And I'm also really glad to hear, and I'd like to hear more about the program with working with mother and daughter, because I may need some help there. And so, yeah. Well, thank you so much, Victoria. Well, folks, thank you for the folks who are hanging on here. I'm hoping you're appreciating the conversations that we are having. I know it's kind of heavy and it could be a little draining, but thank you. These are important stories, and you see why we have to really actually get this work done and work together. And, think of also creative ways of how to do this. My opinion is I'm all for protesting and going out to lobby and all that, but I think we got to start thinking of a little bit more radical way, because it seems like they've gotten used to that. And when I say they, the people who continue to allow the systems to exist, it seems like they've gotten so used to it. It's normal and it's fine. Protesting, what is that going to do? And yeah, I'm not taking away from it, because again, I'm out there too. But we have to get more creative and more radical. And so, yeah. Our next guest we have coming up, and I'm going to allow, the panelists, you guys, to really just talk more. I'm just going to read a couple of things about our next panelist and the following panelists after. But our next panelist is Pastor Isaac Scott. Pastor Isaac Scott is an award-winning social impact multimedia artist and human rights activist. He is a fellow at the Center of Institutional and Social Change at Columbia Law School, and the founder and lead artist for the Confined Arts at the Center for Justice at Columbia University, where he spearheads the promotion of justice reform through the transformation power of the arts. So, without ado, Isaac, I'm passing the baton to you. And folks, I hope you enjoy hearing this story we have next. Take it on, Pastor Isaac Scott.
I wanted to first thank you, Pilar, for all of the organizing work that you've put into this. Yeah, I just want to commend you on that, especially just with the amount of people you've been able to organize around this. And, you know, we're not here putting stories on display, but I think it's important that we share narratives amongst community and learn about each other to be able to build. I wanted to Ms. Davis, just thank you so much for everything that you're doing. Thank you for your work. Thank you for your words. I took so many notes on what you were saying, you know, and you covered every area of perspective when it comes to this work and advocacy work, and I appreciate, you know, hearing about your journey. And I would love to just outside of this just link with you and see how we can throw some artistic advocacy behind your work, and really because it's all one and the same, you know. And I really, really appreciate everything that you said. Nia, you know, it's so funny. I actually am from Douglas, and I grew up in, I'm from A75 Columbus, A65 Columbus, 60, you already know. I know that 24th precinct, that's where I got all my time from, you know. So it was just interesting. When Pilar told me that she had somebody, she said she's speaking from Frederick Douglass, my head just snapped like, who are you talking about? So I just wanted to know who you was. So it was good to, I know that I'm a lot older than you. So when I was out there, last time I was out there was like 2006. So I know you was probably like a baby at that time. But I know we all know the same people, but I want to just echo Victoria, and that I appreciate hearing and seeing the youth leadership, and especially hearing about young people coming out of that space, and me being a young person and how I had to come out of that space. I didn't just come out of it, you know, via being able to go to school, and, you know, not to say that any person in particular kept me from doing it. I think circumstances and situation, and just as a young person, knowing and not knowing information keeps you from making certain decisions. But I am so happy that you made all of the right decisions, and you're able to say, you know, I'm not in Harlem right now. I come back though. You know, I feel like that's big for you, because I know, you know, a lot of your people out there who locked up right now, who didn't go and didn't make it, you know, to where you at, and being able to do what you're doing. So I know that that's huge. And I just wanted to just congratulate you on that and tell you to keep doing that work, and keep going back and talking to your people and encouraging them to also do the same thing, and bring some of that advocacy back into Douglas, so that it can, and we should talk about that, right? And how do we bring that back? You know, I spent most of my life in Frederick Douglass Children's Center, right at A75. And, you know, I don't know if you know David, but he was one of the counselors there, who was there with Hammer and there with Lawrence. This is like long before your time, but David is now he's leading the Youth and Education Committee for Community Board 11 that I sit on. So there's still that history of the Children's Aid Society and being in Douglas that's still resonant. So I just wanted to just say that I appreciate, just introduce myself to you, and then also just say I appreciate all the work that you're doing right now, and everything that you're gonna do. You like, you're like a superhero for me already, because just to see young people doing it, you know, and just being so much wiser, you know, than I was as a young person is very encouraging. But I guess it's a lot that I could tell you about me. I got a timer here. I took already like 4 minutes to say that. So Pilar, count me on 15 minutes, and I'll try to stay on time. I want to keep the conversation going. I don't want to block it up at all. So just a little bit about me. As you know, I came right out of Douglas, right out of the Upper West Side. But I'm from Harlem. I'm born and raised, all different parts of Harlem. But Douglas is really where I was from, where I did everything that I did. And I want to I think I want to share some experiences, but not share them in an irresponsible way. I did have a lot of run-ins with the law. I also did make decisions that weren't always the best decisions. And I want to say that because when I was, one of the things when you go to jail and you do time, you learn in jail that everything that you go through is your fault. That's what they say. If you didn't like it, you shouldn't have come to jail. You know, if you didn't like it, you shouldn't have come to jail. So you come home, you know, anytime anybody come home, you think that that's, you know, the truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God, right? You think that that's all it is until you start really learning about, you know, social, economical, you know, different disparities that sort of push people in, you know, certain roles to make decisions that, you know, kind of put your back up against the wall in ways that you're not equipped to really deal with, or you don't have the capacity or the support around you to really make a rational or logic or a good decision, you know? So support is so important in the lives of young people. But I did have a lot of very misfortunate run-ins with the 24th precinct myself, and it was very much, I mean, we all know, we could spend all day talking about how corrupt the police are. We know what they do. We know the attitude that they come with. We understand the power dynamics, you know, and if you know, kind of want to learn more about, you know, power dynamics, I think the experiment that I think was done at Cornell, or I forget what college it was done, but it was a prison experiment that just gave students power as correctional officers. And you can just see how their whole attitude, it just changed. Power does something. Having a gun on your hip does something. It's something about being able to bully your way through life. I'm speaking now from the space of being a person who has a past and understand what it's like to walk around under those same circumstances. So in a lot of ways, you can, you know, gain your confidence from that gun on your hip, or you can gain your right to tell people what to do from the authority that you feel like you have, you know? And that's a lot of what we talk about when we see, you know, the police stepping in as the law, right? And there's been a number of occasions where they have just flat out lied, you know, and then walked up on us like, yeah, it's my word against yours. Who you think they're gonna believe, you know? And so we've experienced some very grievous things by the NYPD. But, you know, I think one thing to remember is that we're talking about people. You know, we understand that people are gonna be people. You know, and we put people in certain situations and we put people in these positions. We really got to be vetting. And I think I was just really asking the Lord, like, what is those things that I need to really be talking about in this conversation? And I think we need to talk about our character, how we go about like really identifying justice, and how we go about getting that done. And there is like a perspective in one that I share, abolition one that says, get rid of the police, defund the police. We don't need them. They don't need to be here. You know, that is the truth. I believe that because they came out of being slave catchers to now, you know, evolving into what they are now. But I think also we got to understand that wheat and tears. Right now, there are people existing in our communities that rely on the police for their safety. As unfortunate as that is, you know, as violent, it's so funny because I told my wife the same thing, that by calling the police on someone, that is violence. Because you can almost surely ensure that they are going to come and get aggressive if they don't get their way. We just know that that's going to happen. If they come and they believe the situation needs to go a certain way and it doesn't go that way, they're getting physical. Automatically, we know that's not going the right way. That's violence. That's just having violence at the tip of your finger and using it, you know? So we understand that. But there's also the people who don't, you know, we don't have, let's be real, we don't have systems really to set up to cure violence for a lot of women who may be suffering from domestic violence right in their homes right now, that are set up right now to walk door to door and to get them out of situations, or really to stand in the gap to get people help they need, to get people out of a home where it's like somebody's in the home that don't need to be there, and they're really being someone there, an intercessor, if it's not law enforcement, someone else to step in and solve that problem for this woman, for this person. It doesn't have to be a woman, it can be any situation. And I think we have to take that into consideration. I have a history. I have grown up. I've been through a lot. I've done 9 years in prison. I understand, you know, the injustices of the criminal justice system may be a lot more unique than a lot of us, having been in prison and seeing what it looks like, what injustice looks like inside the walls, because it's different when you can record what's happening and we can put it on social media, and it's different. There's people right now getting their head kicked in and stomped in. Police in Attica, they relentless. In other prisons, they're relentless. And there's nobody there to advocate for them. We're not talking about that right now. So there's a lot, right? But going back to the point that I was making, I don't want to, because I rant sometimes. Going back to the point that I was making about, you know, just as we build our character, we really have to stop depending on the police to be our Lord and Savior, because that's what we are looking at in community. So there was a little bit of a beef with Community Board 11 in Diana Ayala's office about, you know, the community support of defunding the police. I think where everything went wrong is just in the communication of the concept of defunding the police versus the content and what it actually means. You know, we're not doing a good job explaining what it actually means, you know, reallocating funds into places and resources like I just mentioned, versus it being, you know, just get rid of the police on the street and it's no more safety. You know, that message wasn't communicated at all. But I think that I brought that up because we depend on the police too much. Isaac, I'm on the phone. Give me like 5 minutes. Tell Haiti whatever you need, or tell Anisha. Tell Haiti or tell Anisha what you need. I think that we depend too much on the police. We call the police for everything from like a cat in the tree to noise outside to you know, everything. If we want to solve a problem and we mad about it, calling the police. I'm calling the police. That's the last line of defense for people who feel powerless. Let's talk about that for a second. You know, what is that coming from? You know, and why do we use the police one way, right? Why is it okay to say free the people but lock up the police who shoot people? I wonder. That's a very hard question. I don't have the answer to that, but we got to start looking at the character, the principles, when it's okay to say certain things, do certain things, and when it's not okay to do that. And how do we really create a community really that protects people? How do we get, like, if I just looked at East Harlem, how do we set up district needs and budgets in a way where it puts the hands and cure violence people's hands and resources and medical support in all of those areas to provide the necessary resources that a community would need absent the police? Because the police don't really do what you call them to do anyway. They don't actually lead to public safety. You understand what I'm saying? So we are calling them for this, like, this idea that they will solve a problem that they're not equipped to solve. Most of the time they'll say, we don't want to deal with that. We don't like when they call us for these things. Call them. You know, so I think that there's a lot that we really have to interrogate as we think about the work. A lot of the work that I do, just to build more into my story, a lot of the work that I do comes out of my own story and me serving 9 years in prison and serving 9 years for doing a lot of selling drugs and a lot of violence right on the west side of Harlem. And a lot of it was very, very senseless, just as a very misinformed young person. You know, that's why I can really commend young people who are informed now, who have the support, and I really support, you know, programs and projects that put support behind young people, because they are our future. You know, thank God that I didn't die in prison and I'm able to be here now and do work that's meaningful. But what if I would have died? I have friends who didn't make it, you know, and why does it have to be that? You know, why can't we get to young people and meet them at the needs that they have, and not as adults, you know, because I got kids, so I know the difference between meeting kids as adults, meeting young people as adults, and then meeting them as children, that we just think we know what they need and not listening to them and not listening to their voices, you know. But so a lot of that was just me being a troubled youth. But I know one thing I did when I went to jail is I looked at that like a brand new start. And I was relieved in a lot of ways in that I could get a new start at life. And because I knew what I wanted in life, I just didn't know how to get it. And I didn't know how to pursue it, you know, and I needed to take time for myself. Not that I needed the prison time to do that, but I don't think that I think that the Lord was saying, I don't think no other way is going to really get you to sit still, Isaac. So I'm going to just allow this to happen so that you can sit still. I can get your attention. We can build, and then you can come home and be better and be the person that I wanted you to be. You know, how do we? So a lot of my work comes out of that, and really also like paying it forward as an artist who's formerly incarcerated. I learned art while I was in prison. You know, I went to college before I went to jail. So funny. And this speaks to the level of trauma in my life, because even with a college, like, I job quick enough, or I need guys, I just don't know what to do. I'm going to do and went back to what I was doing before. And it led me to getting more time than I had got the first time. So I just want to you know, speak very much to the need of intercession for us as community leaders, community builders. And we really we gotta stand in the gap. And standing in the gap really means making that connection between the issue and the solution, right? How do we stand in that gap and create those necessary threads to get there? And we don't know everything, but we know what doesn't work, right? So at the very least, we can move in the right direction. And I say that we don't know because there are a lot of perspectives that we keep outside of conversations. So I sit in conversations as a formerly incarcerated person who be like, yeah, free the people, Black power. I'm a Black man, so I'm like Black power. But I also sit in different spaces, and I have to entertain and occupy a lot of other conversations and perspectives, and I'm like, interesting. You know, it makes me think about Du Bois and his concept of double consciousness, and how just that whole veil prevents you know, Black people from seeing themselves outside of how white people see themselves. How outside of white people seeing us, right? Because it's a white consciousness in this country, but also it prevents us from being able to see white people and see police in different lenses. There are my son wants to grow up and be a cop, right? So say he's 19 now, right? So it ain't like I can he's at a point, he's studying now, he's studying and he's about to transfer schools. And I'm not I'm educating him, but I'm not stopping him from doing that. So in a few years, he'll actually be a cop, right? Can I say that, because I can easily say all cops are bad for standing under this umbrella of policing and what the history of it is, blah, blah, blah. But does that mean that my son also is you know? So what is the perspective I take on this, right? And then do I still continue to look at it that way? Or do we start to look at, hey, what if we got our own people into these places and infiltrated these places? And what if we got our own people in local politics and got our own people in these places and we co-opted them to be what they should be or what we want them to be, right? So it's like, what perspective should I take on what's happening and what I see going on, right? And point of view shapes perspective. So if I take the point of view of just Black militant, it's like, F the police, Jay Sean, I love you, but I don't like your job, bro. I hate it. You know what I mean? But if I take a different point of view, then it's like, hey, bro, why don't you why don't you work your way up to the top in there and start really making some change and really be one of those lieutenants in there who's getting rid of people and holding everybody accountable and blah, 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 because the police still exists now. So we know right or wrong, and we never gonna justify the police because they dead ass wrong. I'm gonna say that publicly, dead wrong. I ain't gonna bite my tongue, and I never do. I'm never gonna do that. Never, 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 never. But we definitely gotta open up our perspective because everybody in the community don't feel the same way and they don't understand the same way. And they don't have the same experiences as us. So we have to like be really willing to be open and understanding, even to our annoying neighbor, the person that we think is really annoying, that we really disagree with. You know, and how do we begin to bridge this gap of human connection? There's such a disconnect in this country. And COVID-19 and the pandemic and social distancing didn't make it no better. We are even further separated than we were before in so many ways. And it's important, right? And then we got a president who people think is our king, and they think we're supposed to like get our example for living from him. So when they see him do foolishness, they do it. And it's a lot we got to deal with. It's a lot. You know, and this makes me think about, and I'll shut up after this. This makes me think about what Victoria was saying, and she mentioned young people being desensitized, you know, and not feeling that trauma anymore. And I can resonate with that. And it's like we see so much, we become desensitized to it, and it doesn't. And it's like, oh, that's what it is. I asked my daughter, like, yo, what you think about all this is going on? She like, it's just how things are, and it was sad. You know, it's sad because that's how young people are receiving it. It's just what they know because that's all they see. And they don't see anything different, which then takes me to the point of vicarious trauma, which is that trauma that we receive from seeing, you know, what's happening out here. And this is the plight of Black and brown people, to have to not only experience, you know, trauma to the point of desensitization, but we also experience vicarious trauma, and that we got to watch this continually happen to our brothers and our sisters. There's a lot of work that we got to get done. And I just want to encourage us all to just like be responsible in that work and how we execute that work. And it ain't just the reason I'm an artist and the reason I hone in on the arts, because it ain't just about banging down the door, you know, in the legal spaces and the policy spaces. And trust me, I'm in both of those spaces, but it's also that creativity that we can bring to the forefront to really help people to understand real lived situations and understand real narratives and understand stories and understand people, you know. So we got to, you know, do more arts engagement and really like start to want to understand people more. If you don't want to understand people more, then you don't need to be doing this work. I just want to say that if you don't want to understand the people you're working with and you're working for, and it's just you. I love that, Victoria, that you said, I see you. You see me? Well, where you at? You know, where you at? What you doing? Why you all the way over there? Why you ain't next to me? So I feel you 100% on that. And I just want to, in closing, say that I'm happy to keep building, answer any questions. But yeah, I just want us to like move forward better, you know, and change. We're going to make our change at the local level, because no matter what happens at the national level, we're not going to be happy, y'all. Trust me, we're not going to be happy. So we got to make our change at the local level where we can have a lot of change, because a lot of the brothers and sisters going through criminal justice related issues are, you know, those things can change if we got at the people in these local positions.
I appreciate you so much. I really do. You said so much that I would love to like say back, but I want to give, there's been like hands raised from our panelists here. And I think Michelle had her hand raised first, and then we have Victoria, but thank you so much.
Yeah. Thank you, Pastor Scott, for that. I just wanted to expound on defunding the police and what that means to me. Defunding police doesn't mean abolishing NYPD. What it means is stopping the over-policing and the hyper-policing in our communities. What it means is reactive policing. What it means is accountability. What it means is providing more training. Officers should come from our communities. There should be more cultural astuteness. And that's what defunding means to me. Our communities, yes. When we say we don't, no one is saying we don't need the police. We need better policing.
Can I?
And I think we have to stop monetizing Black and Latino pain and trauma. And we have to stop, this wall of blue silence. Accountability and transparency is very important.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with you, and I think that what I'm trying to, no one's ever off the hook for accountability, and I'm going to say that we don't need any policing. We don't even need to use that word. We need to use more accountability and more community accountability practices, measures, and methods. That's what we need. I don't think policing is even the word that I would even go towards. But I think the point that I'm trying to get folks to understand, and I'm not sure how many folks served on the community board and have gotten an opportunity to really listen to community needs and understand that everyone in the community who is represented, when we say a community, does not have the same intellectual capacity or literacy as everyone else. Everyone is not as informed about these issues as everyone else. So when you go to a person and you say, hey, how do you feel about defunding the police? And you don't communicate what that actually means in a way where they can understand it, then the message is completely lost. And it's lost in the concept because the content wasn't explained for what it should be. And defunding the police is what you said, and it's even more than that. It's reallocating money from law enforcement, and it's reallocating money from militarizing security and correctional control. It's taking money away from a white supremacist sort of backing and putting it in the hands of the people who need it, who do the community work. And if you said that to people and you explained it to them that way, then they would support it a lot more than they would just support what they think defund the police means, because activists and advocates, and I'm gonna say everybody who would call themselves a part of this movement, you have to do a better job at articulating what that means, defunding the police. So I appreciate you, Michelle, telling us, because that's what everybody needs to do. Clarify what that means. Don't just say that term without clarifying it. Don't say it if you don't plan on clarifying it, because everyone doesn't understand what that means, especially coming from a traumatic space. If I'm traumatized and the police kept me safe from an abuser, and you start talking about getting rid of the police, I might just get triggered by thinking about that and just be like, hell no, I ain't supporting that. So we gotta be trauma informed when we go to educate people about community issues. So that's really a lot of what I'm trying to get across, and helping us to understand that there are a lot of perspectives here that we have to really understand when we are articulating these messages, because I think the defund the police, I understand it for what it is and what it needs to be. You don't even got to explain it to me. Just say defund the police. I'm good with that. But I understand a lot of my people who don't understand it. And I've talked to a lot of people who don't understand it, and they really misunderstand it. And that's important, that communication and accessibility to information is everything. That's a form of oppression when information is not accessible, you know?
And that's when it comes down to more community engagement. When it comes down to meeting our community where they are and listening to those that are most impacted. When you are drafting, creating legislation and these policies, make sure that those that are the most impacted are at the table. Yeah. That you can consider their concerns. You cannot go into communities and tell people what they need. Ask them what they need. And in regards to additional defunding, where that money should go in removing the police out of our school system. That money should go in establishing more domestic violence programs. That money should go in helping to, abolish food deserts, establishing, hospital funds for our public underfunded hospitals and underfunded schools. So when you're talking about how, to allocate those resources, that's, those are the social services gaps that still persist in our Black and Latino communities. The digital gap is egregious, especially in a time of COVID when a lot of our kids are, at home and they have remote schooling. A lot of them don't have access to a laptop or iPad or internet.
Yeah, a lot of folks can't get to watch this
Right.
today because of this. And, we'll have it recorded though. And I thank you so much for those words. Thank you, Isaac. We're running a little behind schedule. But yes, there's just so much to say. And that's why these webinars, I feel you need to schedule them for 6 hours, but how are you going to keep people for 6 hours? But I don't want to hold too much of our panelists because I also want to give people at the end opportunity to let people know. Maybe panelists, please put in the chat how people can get in touch with you just in case, if you can't stay. But our next panelist that we have coming up, like I mentioned earlier, I met this panelist at Drug Policy Alliance Reform Conference in St. Louis last year, which was my first time on an airplane in 10 years because I hadn't been able to take vacation because I've been trying to survive for all these years. But I got to meet this amazing human being. She was on a panel. Well, yeah, she was on a panel, but anyway, she's cool as fuck. Her name is Alejandra Pablos, and Alejandra Pablos is a reproductive justice community organizer, creative curator, and storyteller working at the intersections of the criminal injustice and immigration systems. She has a lot to say, and I want to give her the time to say it without taking too much of her time. So, Alejandra.
Hi everyone, what's up? Thank you, Pilar. Thank you for all the work that you're doing, all the organizing you're doing. It's really dope to see you doing all this work. So thank you for sharing your story and all the speakers that came before me. My pronouns are she and hers. I'm in Autumnland, Phoenix, Tucson, Arizona. And I'm really invested in the work that y'all are doing to expunge because for one, it's not something we have in Arizona. We don't have expungement tools and we underuse our post-conviction tools. And two, as a non-citizen, we really wouldn't thrive off of expungement. And I can share a little bit more around that and why I do this work and why I'm invested in this happening so that it can replicate in other states. So again, my name is Alejandra. I go by Ale. I'm a community organizer, storyteller, a non-citizen person. So I was a legal permanent resident. My mom is a naturalized citizen. My brother was born here. So I come from a Mexican mixed status family. And little did I know a lot about our system, right? The biggest key is misinformation to, tear us apart, to break down and keep our families down and our communities down, right? So I think we were very unfamiliar about the gaps in the immigration system. And I just never became a citizen. And, my mom and I have been living in California and Arizona for all our lives. My brother, is even a vet. And the way that we experienced the mass incarceration system was by being introduced to immigration, the cornerstone of criminalizing immigration. And I got picked up. I had pled guilty to a possession of paraphernalia. And those were the reasons where my probation officer called immigration on me. So I had pled guilty with the knowledge that a felony undesignated paraphernalia charge would not harm me with immigration. And 5 months later, ICE comes and picks me up at my monthly probation appointment. And I remember ICE literally saying, turn around, you're being deported to Mexico. And I'm like, what? I have a legal permanent resident card. My mom's a citizen. This is a mistake. Let me call my mom. And I didn't come home for another 2 years. I spent 2 years in a private prison ran by CCA for civic. I got introduced to what was happening to the rest of the world. I was not organizing. I was not some of the other young people we see now organizing just because they see injustice and they're abolitionists by nature. I started organizing and challenging narratives of criminalization because I was inside. I didn't come home for 2 years, even with a legal permanent resident card. So I understood, really what xenophobia was about. I understood what really the war on drugs was, right? The people I met inside were people surviving harm, poverty from other countries, surviving the war on drugs. And I was like, holy shit, gonna slow down. So yeah, I really started to use the skills I already had because I used to be a teacher. I used to organize in the community, after school programs and so forth. So when I was inside, I began to organize, and I think it changed my life. This was in 2011. So it's gonna be tomorrow, 9 years that ICE picked me up, and I've been fighting deportation. So just to bring it back to the importance of when we talk about expungement of marijuana, decriminalizing marijuana right now, we are not seeing the harms that it has to non-citizens. Marijuana is a federal substance, federal issue. Immigration is also federal. Federally, it's not legal or decriminalized. So the same rights that y'all have in your own states as citizens, we don't take we don't have those privileges. So I think generally convictions still make all immigrants deportable, even those convictions that have been expunged, for example, in probably in other states that do have expungement. But the only way to really completely eliminate deportation consequences of a conviction is by vacating it based on the ground of legal or invalidity, right? Like ineffective counsel. So I think once a conviction has been expunged, it can still pose major hurdles for immigrants trying to prove eligibility for certain benefits like citizenship. So I think, when we talk about the growing national effort to expand access to state record clearance, that's what really is what guarantees a promise for us not to have any immigration consequences. But unless it considers immigrants, it could actually get us into more trouble, right? So I think there's some following practices. I'm gonna share just some practices from the Immigration Legal Resource Center, and I'll drop some links in here. But I think some of the best practices that, that we talk about is to make sure when we're advocating for decriminalizing that it covers immigrants, that it takes immigrants into account, non-citizens, even those with status, right? We have student visas, we have residents, we have people on protected status and so forth. So I think we have to make sure that we include the option of vacating for these causes, right? To ensure courts retain, to ensure that courts actually do diversion before pleading guilty, right? Because even when you plead guilty, diversion will still allow ICE to use that against you. When we advocate for a bill and implement it, we prioritize public education as well, right? So it's important to, that Pilar had me, even if I'm not from New York, right, to be talking about the consequences for non-immigrants, because the truth of the matter is we're not thinking about those. We're not thinking about non-immigrants in those intersections, right? And there are Black immigrants, right, that are even more racially profiled already in the system that get funneled, and that suffer twice, right? So I think for me right now, it's also about trying to get out of deportation proceedings. It's really tough because, I'm already mandatory, deportation because I'm just not a citizen and I have some drug related charges. So I think right now we're trying to figure out because how to do that post-conviction, how to vacate the charge that's making me deportable right now. So those are the kinds of things that I'm doing, but I'm really looking forward to these conversations that give access, that ensure access to post-conviction for us immigrants too, right? We deserve to move on as well, right? We deserve to stop looking over our shoulders. If ICE or police pull us over in Arizona, when police pulls you over, ICE is right there. The racial profiling against brown women, legal permanent residents, right? Black people, brown people, indigenous people here is one of the highest. We have, we over-sentence folks. Most of us are being in deportation proceedings because of marijuana. So it's really, really harmful. And I think, we are focusing on retroactive legislation right now. We have something called the New Way Forward, and that's a federal legislation bill that takes away discretion from the police. Right now, the police has so much power to literally put people in deportation proceedings for just possession of marijuana. So the New Way Forward, and I can link it in here as well before I get off, really restores vital due process, right? It really puts limitations on when ICE can come back for you. Even I have my best friend's dad who at 17, had a possession of marijuana, and he's 67 being retroactively deported and asked to go into jail to start a deportation proceeding. Like, nah, right? So I think it ends harmful practice between local police and collaboration, and it creates a just pushes back on a lot of labels that are ambiguous right now. So right now we're putting people in deportation proceedings because we call stuff crime involving moral turpitude. So I had also a DUI. And that's a CIMT, right? There, anything could be a CIMT. It's really big and ambiguous. So this bill, what it does is really pushes back on just unclear labeling and how we're just being funneled. The Department of Justice already has a lot of 94 crime bill, right? And they kind of like got the 96 immigration bill to kind of, work the same way for immigration. A little complicated. I'll share some links. But again, I think folks right now are really looking at, again, federal law controls. If there's federal law classifies marijuana as Schedule I controlled substance, right? So we're working on those kinds of things. So really like following the leadership of lawyers already working at the intersections of immigration, I think is important. There is no defense. It's really difficult, right? But I think really, really considering immigrants to lessen, right, to abolish the consequences for non-citizens is going to be super important. And that's it. I think I just want to wrap up. I don't have much time, but I'm really just thankful that we're here talking. I think decriminalization means removing criminal penalties for drug law violations, not just weed, all of them, right? And I think sometimes we don't need alternatives. We just need to leave people alone. And I think, some people already live in an abolitionist future. Some people already live where they only call the police when they need it, right? Where they're not literally in their neighborhoods. And I want that for us. I want those people to want that for us. And I think this is why we do what we do. I'll share the links in there of some of the things that I was informed by the Immigration Legal Research Center. It's justice folk. They're committed to work with folks that are doing policy work to decriminalize and to make sure we consider immigrants. So I can share the email of Rose too that I really trust, and just, donate to my campaign. I'm still fighting my deportation campaign, trying to make sure that I'm building and creating pathways of protection with my community, because we know policy is not changing. The culture needs to shift and change so we can push back on ICE, and we will abolish ICE. I think that's the only way that we can attain reproductive justice, when our families stop being separated. And expungement also is reproductive justice work. I want to say the fact that y'all fight for people to be able to create the families they want in safe environments, that means stop being haunted for the things you did in your past, right? To move on from those things. We get to do that as well. So thank you so much for all the work, and just I'll leave some information in here. I'm sorry that I spoke so fast.
Thank you so much. No, I appreciate you for taking the time to be here. I don't know if folks, or if any of the panelists, or if there are any questions before Alejandra has to go. We do have one more panelist up, but like just before Alejandra goes, if anyone has anything to ask or just comment, just let us know now. If not, again, thank you for those words. And it's a lot of information. It's very complicated, and yeah, it's not something that is easy. And then with the current administration, it not being easier, and then us losing Supreme Court judges too. Yeah, so people are saying they appreciate you. Yeah, donate to Alejandra. Like you said, she's fighting. She survived. Still, all of us here are surviving. Everyone on this panel and all the people on this team, surviving one way or another. But thank you, Alejandra. And if folks do not have any questions, I guess I will move on to our final panelist. And you're probably wondering why, and it was really complicated for me to figure out the order of this, but we did know that, we wanted to save the lawyer for last. And, not only is she a lawyer, though, she's an amazing human being. I've gotten to know her, working with her on this team, and then a little bit in the cannabis industry. But next we got Michelle Fields coming up. She is introducing attorney Michelle Fields. Michelle Fields is a practicing attorney here in New York State with litigation experience, criminal, business, immigration, and contract law. And now she is a cannabis attorney, legal writer, advisor in the areas of regulatory and compliance. And so, going to leave Michelle now. Again, I'm pretty sure she's got a lot of things to say, especially following such amazing people. So, Michelle, take it away.
And also a proud, proud, proud public defender. And so with that said, I would just like to say that when it comes to, social equity, when it comes to restorative justice, expungement is a part of it. In New York State, we have case sealing, but that's going to be a whole another discussion. But what I would like to see, and because I'm on the front line of it every day in court, is that we allow for full expungement for those that have completed their probation or parole sentencing. We allow for full expungement for those that have not had any convictions. Instead of 10 years, a year. And the reason why I say that is because convictions are barriers to education, especially for federal student loans, barriers to employment, barriers to housing, and those are the areas that are where Black and Latinos are the most impacted. And for my client, and as well as immigration, for my clients, it's very important that not only do I provide a service, but a solution as well. So it's very important if my client is, I know for certain that he's not or she's not qualified or able to finish probation, that's not the disposition I'm going to take. If I have a client that is a legal permanent resident that has no status, I'm not going to take a disposition until I consult with my immigration attorney. The best advocacy is placing your client in the best position, in the same position before that arrest. And that's very important. When we talk about entry, when we talk about restorative justice should also consider abolishing our prisons, our jails, our immigration detention centers, our military, our juvenile detention centers. Restorative justice also has to consider how do we assess or how do we apply a rehabilitative approach to the criminal justice system? How do we apply the principle of normality when someone has already done their jail time, someone is sentenced already for, to 2 or 5 years. That person should come out, back in the community, and we should start thinking about how do we now assist them in acclimating back in the community. And it also includes reducing probation and parole time as well, and not looking at those parole or probation violations as technical violations that places someone back into prison, which increases, recidivism. So that's where I am in regards to when you think about reentry, when you think about restorative justice, when you think about repairing the harm. Repairing the harm is a second chance. Repairing the harm is also providing access to quality healthcare, providing access to quality education for everyone, providing access to housing, quality housing for everyone. In New York City, there are almost close to 400,000+ NYCHA residents. In regards, when we talk about prior convictions, when we talk about possession of cannabis, those arrests or those convictions can lead to eviction or inclusion. I think as a panel, I think collectively, there's a pending bill right now in New York State that is going to exempt those that live in NYCHA housing that are medical marijuana patients from being evicted. I think we need to start addressing those substantive issues in regards to housing, how a prior conviction, if not expunged, affects someone's housing, even if they're charged or convicted of a simple possession of cannabis. That's number one. Number two, it's also looking at how we increase the community engagement in our neighborhoods in regards to building relationships with the police. And also creating a collaborative effort where we not only work with community-based organizations, we work with the Cure Violence sites, we work with the people from those communities, the tenant organizations. It's a collective effort, it's not individual. And we all have to come together. We all have to use those expertise, because each and every one of you on this panel and those that are attending, you are the experts. So when we start thinking about what does that legislation look like? What does restorative justice look like? What does social equity and education and development what does that look like? Not everyone, most people that I have represented, if they do not qualify for case sealing, then there's other relief. There's certificates of good standing, there's certificate of relief from civil disability. A lot of people need those expungements or case sealings or certificates to get bonded or to work in security, or if they want to go into the armed service, for education, if they're applying for federal student loans. They need these certificates to allow them to apply for these services or show some mitigation. In regards to immigration, it's always been a practice of mine. I don't take a disposition without consulting an immigration attorney, especially, and my advocacy is not to jeopardize the status of my client. That's number one. And number two, encourage my clients, once there is a disposition or there's a dismissal, that we obtain those certificates of disposition. You use those certificates in your petition if you're looking to adjust for naturalization, because you have to show that that case is closed or that case is dismissed and that it's no longer an open case. A lot of people in our communities don't know what a certificate of disposition is. How do you, and that comes down to participatory defense and empowering and educating our communities. How to advocate for yourself, especially our immigrant community. And how do we support, and how can I be effective and advocate on behalf of my client? And my client, and I work with an immigration attorney if I have a client that is a legal permanent resident. There's no disposition without consulting that immigration attorney first. In regards to how restorative practices look, again, I think probation officers should be an instrumental part of reentry services. When a person is released from jail, that person should be able to have those resources to help him or her acclimate, to prepare for job trainings, for mental health. Mental health issues are not fully addressed in our communities. What about those services? Trauma is real for all of us in our Black and Latino communities. Let's increase those mental health services for everyone, not only those that are, coming out of prison, but those that are in our communities that are constantly suffering from the trauma of police brutality, from just violence, gang violence. And when I talk about gang violence, when it comes to defunding the police, I would like to include that we need to abolish the gang database in New York City as well, in New York State. And so, there's a lot of areas. Social equity includes expungement, case sealing, but it's a lot more. And it's going to take a lot more of community engagement, collaborative effort, not only from us, from our youth, from our tenant associations, from our courts, from our probation, from our parole, and from our police. Let's sit down at the table, and everyone's voice should be a part of those decision-making bodies, not just those that you study policy, you study theory, but do you really know what we need to be whole in our communities? And when you talk about social equity, we're talking about, abolishment. Mass incarceration is real for us, but we're so busy, our prisons are growing, 2.5 million people are incarcerated in the United States. We're so busy with funding and, with private prisons that we are forgetting those social issues that are still persistent in our Black and Latino communities. So with that said, I think that I'm encouraged by everyone's voice. I'm passionate about this work. I'm dedicated about this work. I'm committed. But we need to, on a global level and on a community level, we need to think about how do we now apply sustainable development goals in those areas when it comes to mass incarceration, abolishing prisons and jails and detention centers, when it comes to abolishing food deserts, when it comes to abolishing medical apartheid. And if anyone is passionate about that, it's all of us on this panel. Because one thing about COVID, yes, we lost a lot of loved ones. However, COVID highlighted the glaring disparities in our communities. And it showed the race-related, infections of Black and Latinos. And it showed the gaps in regards to healthcare in our public hospitals. And the same, healthcare and the same services at someone in New York Cornell is receiving, someone in Brookdale, Jamaica Hospital should be receiving those same quality of service. So again, I'm grateful to be a part of this as a mother, as a Black woman, as an attorney, as a proud public defender, as someone that's kind of geeky, that's kind of curious. I write about the cannabis, law from Moore to MRTA for a local newspaper in Queens, because I need to make sure that my community is aware and empowered and educated on the laws, the legalization of those laws that are coming forward, or hopefully coming forward, and that our people are ready to be involved in this industry.
Thank you so much, Michelle. Thank you very much for all of those words. And, I really appreciate you for all the work that you're doing. Again, there was a time in my life I wanted to be a lawyer. It's always been a passion, but law school, my dyslexia, and people are like, no, because I'm cool on this side. And then I work with the lawyers, the people who want to do this, wanted to go to law school. And we need, more. I don't want to discourage anyone who wants to go to law school. We definitely need more people of color and more people who understand also community lawyering when we're working in our communities and helping our communities heal, because all these systems have harmed us in so many ways. And I know this because, as I mentioned, I wear many hats, and one of them is I work in the housing world, where I work with community-based organizations who are organizing tenants to fight for their rights, but also recognizing that the law and the system doesn't really work in our favor. So how do we use the other tools that they have? And so we're a tool. And so I have not only my own experience with housing court, criminal court. I think I've been to all the courts, family court. I think the only court, no, I've seen Supreme. So I've seen all the courts, and it's just really awful. So it's also like not a lot of representation of people, like you, or like people who are like me, and like people like on this panelist that are there, working with the community. So I really appreciate you and all the work that you're doing. And I had took a couple of notes. Like, I definitely agree with everything, and like going on to like how all these things are intersected. You if you don't have housing, you don't have a job. And you could, but like, the way the shelter system is here in the city is not great. The cluster city is awful. The third, what is it? The third, family quarter, whatever it's called. It doesn't work. And I know this from my own experience, and then experience of working with people who are going through it and having clients. Before doing tenant work, I work with people on public assistance and fighting against that system, which, oh my God, it's a whole nother webinar on how the HRA, human resources, welfare, aka system, is also another place of trauma. And even how security and policing is used in that place, and you have to go through like security. It's just awful. All of it, it's bad. And so, like, family court, with my case right now, I can't see my niece because of my case. I could have lost my housing if I didn't get my record expired. And so, like, all these intersections happen. So if I would have lost my housing, what would have that meant? If I didn't work at the organization that I worked at, what would that have meant? Then I become homeless, and that really creates instability on top of the instability that we are dealing with on a daily basis when you get put through this. And so much healing from this trauma. So I agree, like, more mental health. We have to have some real mental health support as well. And we also have to stop teaching our families, and it's like also like checking our friends and families who tend to frown and make fun of people who are in a unstable place. Like, in my community, I live in the same community as Isaac and Pastor Isaac, and 125th Street on Lexington Avenue is considered the Walking Dead. And people joke and make comments and want to call the police, and don't realize that these are human beings. And it's just awful how it's treated and how human beings are treated, and we're not really like helping one another. So yeah, I agree with everything.
For me, I don't read the newspaper. And the reason why, in my practice, I have always been afraid that I'm going to read about a death of one of my clients. And I did. And so, and also practicing in a borough where two of my friends was murdered. So in regards to mental health and mindfulness, we really need to encourage, mindfulness, practices in our community. When Nia spoke about, a lot of our young Black, Latino boys and girls are dying to live in their own communities. How do you trespass in your own building? How are you profile and harass as you go from home, school, or from school to home? I remember a statement by a young person that said, in New York City, we're not worried about, being shot in school. We are worried about being shot on our way to school. And that's a lot of our young people's, that's their reality. And those stories need to be told. There's constant harassment, stop and frisk of our young Black, Latino girls and boys. And I'm not gonna call them men and women because they're not. And that's their reality every day. And no one should have to live like that. That is trauma. That is violence. And every day, like I said, I don't read the paper. I stopped reading the paper during my practice because I never wanted to read about the death of one of my young clients. And I did. And just so happened last year, the mother of my client called and said, unfortunately, he had passed away. I had to go back. And she said, you didn't read about it? I didn't, that was not a part of my practice. And when I read about it, I can tell you the pain from it all. It took me weeks because we had a great relationship. I had represented him when he was 18 years old. He was murdered at 25. And I still kept in contact with his mom. He will call me with the birth of his first child. He will call me. If he saw me on the street, Miss Fields, how you doing? And so that's the beauty of my work, having those relationships, being connected to my community, having my people to know there's somebody that looks like me that's going to provide the same representation for you that she will want from her own son, for her own community. And I can say again, we have to really work together as a community. We have to come, this is not an individual battle. It's gonna take us all. And our kids should be able to play out in their yard safely. They should be able to hang out after COVID is, flattened, hang out in your courtyard in your NYC building without being harassed, pushed up against a building, searched. And when it comes to prosecution, if there's a fair fight, prosecutors need to understand we have fair fights in our communities. It's not, you shouldn't be charged with gang assault because 4 or 5 people were there during a fair fight. You shouldn't be charged with robbery if one of the kids lost their iPhone. And that's my reality every day when it comes to representing our community. And that's what we're faced because they're so disconnected. So I encourage each and every one of us to continue to fight and turn the negative into a positive and demand accountability. Accountability goes far. Accountability includes, we need for officers to be, if you are going to arrest, you're going to arrest them, and you're going to try them, and and we need some convictions. It's just not enough for settlements or put, give name a street after one of us. We need convictions. We need some real, true, prosecutions, of these police officers that are murdering innocent Black, Latino women and men and boys and girls.
Thank you. Thank you for those words. And see how time just flies when you're just talking and just like letting it flow. And you see, thank you again, Michelle, and thank you, everyone. We're at 6:25, and I want to just say thank you, thank you, thank you. I'm going to put this grid on because there's some cute babies on here. My New York team folks to show your video too as we get close to the end. And thank you to the folks who have registered and that are here. I think there is one question though, Michelle.
Okay.
For you in the chat here. And it says, I am a 3L and I am applying to various DA offices. What role do prosecutors have in being a part of the solution? What changes do you like to see the DA in the DA's office? Oh.
I would like to see more diversity. I need to see more of us on, as prosecutors, because one thing, we need to protect Black and Latino victims as well. That's number one. And number two, accountability, transparency, and fair. And really, know your case. And if you feel that, there has been, your case is problematic, you have a problem with the police officer's testimony, you have a problem how that evidence was collected, you need to do the right thing. And the right thing is to really sit down with your bosses and say, we may have, this is very problematic. There may be there may be enough Brady evidence in here that this may be the wrong person that we're prosecuting. But we need to have more diversity on that side as well.
I agree. I
Yeah.
definitely agree.
I mean, a friend, a prosecutor that I work, closely with, Black female prosecutor, and I asked her the same thing. Why do you do that work? And she said, well, who's going to represent Black and Latino victims? Who's going to stand up for them? And it hit me when she said that, because I didn't think of it in that way. I thought her role was very punitive, carceral, and you're just going to prosecute and you're going to convict by all means necessary. But when she put it in that context, I thought differently in regards to the role of the prosecutor.
Yeah, I could see that too, and that's, that they do it the right way, not like, just we have to get numbers in, we have to get people in. Like, if I had a good district attorney in my case, prosecutor, you would see that I didn't need to go through all of these things that I'm going through.
Right. And take a rehabilitative approach, and also take an approach where, the approach that prosecutors need to be from their community as well. If you are protecting and prosecuting on behalf of the community, be from that community. That way you won't ever have to cross-examine a witness of mine and ask my witness on the stand is, one of, a well-known Jamaican restaurant. And I'm not gonna say its name. It's a smoke shop. If you were from my community, you would know that it's a recognized franchise, Jamaican restaurant, and it's not a weed shop. And when he asked that question, and this is during a trial, the whole panel just looked at him and was like, unbelievable. And he lost, and I got acquittal, a foul count acquittal, and that acquittal came back in less than an hour. And it's not because of that line of questioning, it's because they didn't have, he couldn't prove, his burden. So again, I think prosecutors need to be from the community as well, just like the police.
Yeah. And before I get to Victoria's question, Victoria has her hand up. Another thing I would like to say, and I wanted to do another webinar hopefully in the future around this, why it's important to get on jury duties. But think about that. That's so important that our peers are actually represented on the jury. But Victoria, you have a question or a comment?
Yeah, I have like so many questions. I'm going to reach out to you guys afterwards. This is like a really amazing panel. And I just wanted to say, to Michelle's point, representation is like definitely important, especially in this time where people are social justice warriors, because it's easy to do so via social media, right? And so although we want any and all tactics, we just have to really be careful that people aren't sending mixed messages. And especially with the elections for prosecutors, well, district attorneys, prosecutors going on now, I think it's extremely important to see what the plan is, to see what the intentions are. I mean, we get it, but getting to know them and letting them know that we're going to hold them accountable, whether we believe in their job or not, but letting them know that we do have a stake in their election and not their employment. And so I think that it'd be important to pay attention. I know that there's some folks, I think it's like 9 people running for Manhattan DA right now. I've spoken to 2 of them.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And I hate to cut everyone short. And I don't know, Victoria, did you finish your comment, or is it that your computer went out? I think we might have lost her for a second. But while she comes back, I just want to, because some of our folks it's already 6:32, and I know others have other engagements, but I just want to say thank you. And I think the team members should show themselves. New York City National Expungement folks should definitely show themselves on camera. We want to encourage you to come out on the 23rd, where we're going to really talk about how, excuse my language, S-I-S-H-I-T-T-Y, the law. I see, I just decided not to use curse words, but how bad the law is. And Tamika Map, I think you might have wanted to say something, but I'll give you a moment if you do. And Tamika Map is, I think, a new state committee here in East Harlem. But I want to encourage folks to get people to register for Wednesday's webinar. That's going to have more of the, about the laws that exist and don't exist around expungement and record sealing. Talk about automatic expungement around cannabis-related charges. Talk about reentry and talk about clean slate. Her iPad died, Victoria said. And so please, I think, Hector, can you put the link in the chat? People, please register. That is the shortened link if you want to share it with others. Please register and get people to get to that meeting, because if people have questions, I've been getting a lot of messages about people wanting to know, can they get their record expunged? What is expungement? The lawyers that are the experts on this, and these are also partners, and partners of all of us, but especially partners of Michelle, who know about this, and just like Michelle, know how bad it's like non-existent. It's like we just dance in a circle. But that's why Clean Slate campaign is really important, to understand what that is and why you should get involved. So please come out on Wednesday, the 23rd at 5 o'clock. And again, it was the people here that you do and do not see, especially if you see their expungement week. These are the people who have been here. I want to shout out Brooke. I want to shout out Yesenia. I want to shout out Katrina. I want to shout out Hector for Freedom One. I want to shout out Michelle. I want to shout out Raeblin. And I want to shout out our guest, Chocolate Brown. Thank you so much. Christina, as our other attorney on here, who, when we talk about women using, white people using their privilege for good, I will say Christina, and I say this about her, she definitely uses it for all the right reasons. And I appreciate her for being on this team in New York City. I appreciate Carmen for being here. Carmen's an organizer. Carmen's one of the first organizers I've gotten to know. But thank you to all the panelists that have come out. Tamika Map, again, I see that you said, yes, please share also our webinar for Wednesday. Get the information out. Follow National Expungement Week on Instagram and Facebook. If there are any questions or concerns, because we didn't really get to ask this question here, but we want to be able, to know if people are interested in getting a copy of their rap sheet. We want to start that process. We're looking to coordinate another event later in the future. And so that will be more discussed during the Wednesday webinar. So again, if this is something you are interested in and you can't make the webinar, but if you can, just be there. But I would encourage folks to email ny@nationalexpungementweek.org and get your questions answered there for now. If you want a copy of this webinar to share, email that address as well. Panelists, if you want to email a copy of this, it's going to be in the drive that I will give you access to, and our team will have access to. But again, I want to thank folks, and I guess we do. It's only 6:40. We got, I think, the translators. I'm not sure how many folks called into translation, but I just want to say thank you. Thank you for everyone who is here, and again, happy first day of National Expungement Week. And again, please come out the 23rd. I know Chocolate Brown, I was going to say to close us out. So, Chocolate Brown, you want to close us out? And then after that, we'll say, I'll just press end.
Don't forget to vote, you guys.
Oh, yes, don't get to vote. And we're going to talk about that in the next webinar as well.
Thank you for putting this together. You killed it. I appreciate you.
This is
Thank you
good.
so much.
Now, I hope people get a lot of information, got a lot from this and come out to get the other information, because this shit is crazy. But Chocolate Brown, take us out, because I want respect people's time. And again, thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
All right. This is called Mugatu for any Derek Zoolander fans out there. You're a diamond, not a dime. Every time I see you, wanna hit it one more time. Hope I ain't crossed the line. Every time I see you, wanna hit it one more time. Ooh. Said I'ma stay with you, lose a day with you. Every time I see you, wanna hit it one more. Ooh. 'Cause I've been thinking about it, thinking about it, thinking about it, about it, about it. Every time I think I lose my mind, I just lose my mind. Said I've been thinking about it, thinking about it, thinking about it, about it, about it. Every time I think I lose my mind, I just lose my mind. Ooh. You wanna rule the world like you got to. Guess I got you. You asking for the beam, so I got you. And when you ride this beam, you dismount too. You not a Dollar Tree, won't discount you. Trying to be bout you. Can be cool in a room, can be out. So let's get lost. Lays on my knee, got me screaming, so what? Miles Davis in my speaker, yeah. I'm cool, trying to fly away like green. I can beat a pen. And everywhere is my Neverland. Said I've been thinking about it, thinking about it, thinking about it, about it, about it. Every time I think I lose my mind, I just lose my mind. Said I've been thinking about it, thinking about it, thinking about it, about it, about it. Every time I think I lose my mind, I just lose my mind. Ooh. Wanna rock your boat, wanna feed your soul, wanna light your smoke, yeah, yeah. Blowing on that purple stuff. You can blame it on that purple stuff. Said, wanna light your boat, wanna rock your boat, wanna light your smoke, yeah. Blowing on that purple stuff. Said I've been thinking about it, thinking about it, thinking about it, about it, about it. Every time I think I lose my mind.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I appreciate
No problem.
that. And I'm going to take a quick photo, guys. That's like the thing to do these days. But I'm going to take a quick photo. of this Zoom before we close out and actually go off. But I should do a screenshot too, but I always mess that up, so I don't want to do that. So just say cheese or say expungement week. Thank you again. And there was a question in the chat, and I just want to be sure that the person, we caught your question. We're not going to be able to answer it on live, but we'll send you an email and connect that way. We've logged this question, and so we'll get back to you that way. But thank you everyone for tuning in. Let me just press stop on the recording before I end this, because I've made that mistake before.